Hello guys and welcome back. This is Mr. Siege. Now we've had the announcements of Archimedes and Mary the First, but today we've been given or gifted the skills, the obviously talent trees, and obviously the proper images of these commanders now at last, and they're looking great. Archimedes looks really cool, to be fair, with his mathematical tools and his paper. I mean, I should know what this is. Yeah, I can't think of the top of my head. But yeah, so for me, actually, they're looking fairly good. And I know, obviously, I've seen Omniot's video as well. I wanted to see his thoughts on it. Obviously, like he said, he's not a siege main or anything. Now, he went in full details of, obviously, everything else that occurred in the new Rise of Kingdoms video on YouTube with information on all the updates. So there's a lot of changes. And you know what? Holy, very, very good. But let me go into more detail on the engineering commanders' skills, the ones that have been released now. And I actually want to compare them to the original engineering commanders, because you may think, okay, these are probably worse than the ones we've got in Season of Conquest, and they definitely should be. Honestly, I'm actually unsure. I mean, obviously, apart from Archimedes and Cordoba, which are still the best engineering commanders without a doubt. Now, we are expecting more in a couple of months, I'd say, because obviously Archer commanders have been released now, so we should hear more in a couple of weeks or up to a month or so about the new releases in the engineering and leadership reveal. So I'm looking forward to that. And unfortunately, I've just not got enough gold heads to put into these commanders right now. But if I can put like maybe a minimal investment into maybe 5511, or I'll have a look at their skills. Obviously, see where I should be putting points in. But as a fourth march, and maybe disregarding the epic range commanders, I think these could be actually really useful, especially as a siege main, and obviously I'll get onto that in a minute. But let's have a look at Archimedes' first skill, Giant of Geometry. So obviously this is the active skill, single target. Okay, no AoE on these commanders. I'm just going to break it to you now, guys, and you've probably already seen anyway. So if this commander's troop is not within melee range of its target, so obviously you're firing at range for the next 3 seconds, so it's a bit like Archimedes. It's going to be doing skill damage over time over the next 3 seconds, which isn't too much of a problem, but you need to be staying connected to a target, and sometimes that's difficult because obviously people just try and get out of your range, which makes sense. You're not going to want to stay in range and get fired upon, so a little bit of an issue. Their troop takes 15% less range counter damage, so you're going to take less range counter damage, which is great. Which, yeah, you do want that. You don't want to be taking those white numbers all the time, and that over time will save you your severely wounded units. Because, yeah, it does add up, and you see from a lot of range reports, they do end up with quite a lot of troops in the hospital eventually because of this, taking counter damage all the time, counterattack damage all the time, sorry. Whenever it launches a ranged basic attack, it deals extra ranged direct damage to the target, damage factor 400. So once this active skill has actually fired off, for the next 3 seconds then, you're going to be doing, because obviously every second you're doing a basic attack, you're going to be dealing 400 damage factor. So that will equate to 1200 damage factor, which actually isn't bad at range, guys, and I'll show you that in a minute compared to some of the other SOC commanders which we've got in the game right now. And if their troop is within melee range, which you tend to do more damage, and obviously we'll go through that again in a second, very soon. For the next 3 seconds, their troop deals 15%. Okay, exactly the same. Okay, but more counterattack damage. So this is the thing that's changed as well. So when a troop is actually in melee range, you're not dealing ranged counterattack damage. So now you're going to be dealing more counterattack damage, which will actually have an effect on those troops that are attacking you, which is actually quite a big deal. I mean, it's still only 15%. It's not huge, but you are then going to be taking less counterattack damage, which wouldn't be affected by ranged counterattack damage. So it is different. So this does change as well. Whenever it launches a ranged basic attack, exactly the same, it deals extra range. Okay, extra range direct damage factor. Yeah, 600. Okay, so it does increase slightly. And in the past, when you got Margaret and Babur, this would have probably been 800. It was actually doubled. So in melee range, they did, I think Babur was 2,400 or 2,500, and at range it was halved. So I think it's 2,400 halved, which is actually 1,200. So we're actually looking at the same damage, damage factor that Babur does, over time, and you're also gaining this 15% less counter damage. So why can't I say it's counterattack damage? Okay, I'm rushing this too much. So in fact, this active skill is pretty decent. Now, one thing I did miss is we've got the defense tree, which, as we know, the defense tree is pretty good for engineering commanders. We'll be using Guards Armada's primary because there's extra healing on there, and it does provide a bit more longevity in the field. And we'll have a look at that tree in a minute, because we probably would want to use Archimedes as primary, because neither Archimedes nor Mary actually have any healing in their skills, which could be a problem with survivability on the field. So using him as a primary will gain some extra healing, and obviously depends where you put your talents, but I think you will want to do that. So let's look at the second skill, Eureka. We've got, looks like a half-naked Archimedes there. I believe that was a thing. Didn't he go out in the street naked shouting Eureka or something like that? I'm not the greatest historian, guys. You have to forgive me. But this Siege Commander's units gain 15% health, which isn't bad, and 15% march speed. So they are going to be faster on the field, which is obviously much needed for siege units. Obviously, in KVK2, which is when these commanders are released, it's unlikely, I think, or even impossible, is it, that you can get actual legendary ranged, legendary siege gear, which does have march speed bonuses on, and I don't think you're going to be able to get that at this stage. I may be completely wrong, and I will see that soon on my restart account. Well, I say soon, it'll probably be a couple of months. But overall, that's not a bad skill to have. You want health, so that will give you better longevity. It's nowhere near the health of, obviously, Guards Armada, but these commanders aren't supposed to be as good as that, because these are accessible a lot earlier. Now, one thing I will say is if you do max these commanders in KVK2, I'm not sure when the commander swap event comes, but then you could swap these for, obviously, your SOC engineering commanders like your Guards Armada and your Cordoba, and I do think you would want to do that, obviously. So, moment of force, while in ranged mode, which obviously you're going to be in, well, this is the thing. It would be nice if they did release siege commanders that didn't necessarily have to fight at ranged. If you set up a tower, obviously you can fire over a distance with, obviously, within your circle, within your area, your ranged area. But it would be nice to be able to not put it in your tower and just fight normally if you needed to, because you can actually fight. I mean, I use it for fighting barbarians. I use my siege commanders for fighting barbarians and other stuff without being in a tower. But obviously, a lot of these skills won't actually work if you are in a tower. The first skill actually would work if you weren't in a tower, because you would be attacking from melee range, although the actual damage factor is quite low. 1800 though, maybe for KVK2, 1800 damage factor isn't that bad. And then you're dealing more 15% more counterattack damage, so that would work if you're out of tower mode. But this, obviously, the second skill's fine too. But your third skill, you have to be in ranged mode, unless I've not read the rest of it. This kind of troop gains a bonus to damage dealt based on its distance from its target, but you still have to be in ranged mode, ranging from 10% melee range, obviously, to 15% when you're at max range. It's not a huge difference, but okay, so it is when you actually upgrade. So you would want some decent amount of skills in here. Some skill points in here to obviously get it to the max amount. So to be honest, even at melee range, 10% bonus damage isn't bad. And, if you are firing people at maximum range for 15%, I suppose you could target people further away. But there is that chance that they move in and out of your range there. So, it's kind of an odd skill, but I guess it's just a completely different skill to have on an engineering commander, and why not throw some different skills out there? So I kind of appreciate that from Lily through early. Can't say I don't. So that was the third skill. And the fourth skill, Claw of Archimedes. So whenever this commander's troop deals ranged direct damage, it has a 50% chance to inflict the following effects on the target for 4 seconds. 4 seconds actually isn't too bad. So the target loses 10% march speed for 4 seconds, and the target takes 50% more ranged basic attack damage. Okay, now I had to think about this, because obviously I've been thinking about these skills a little bit of time now. I don't want to just go through them straight away with you guys without having a bit of an inkling of what's going on here. And you may think, okay, that's not crazy. Basic attacks is your normal damage, or your ranged normal damage in this case. And 50%, yeah, is great. But I guess you'd be looking at doing like, if you're just attacking one target with your commander. Remember again, this is ranged basic attack damage, 50% range. So your field troops won't benefit from this at all. It'll only be yourself and other ranged towers. So the more towers on the field, the more range basic attack damage this, your target will be taking for 4 seconds. And if you're a siege main, so I'm saying obviously in Season of Conquest like I am, if you've got 4 towers or 5 towers hitting the same target, if you're targeting the same troop here, then they're all going to be doing 50% more range basic attack damage, or the target will be taking 50% more range basic attack damage, and there could be other targets hitting that too, and that would make that target really melt pretty fast, I would think. So we're going to have a look at this in game in a little bit and sort of doing a little bit of an experiment, and we'll have a look at some white numbers if all of my marches are actually attacking a target. I think that could be interesting. And obviously the expertise here, Nolly, Teber, Circulos, Meos, hard, not easy to pronounce that. This commander's troop takes 5% less damage. In addition, their siege units take 5% less damage from infantry, cavalry, and archer units. Honestly, guys, I don't think this is a crazy expertise skill. Yeah, not massively important. I would be tempted here to go 5-5-1-5, to be honest. You're still going to be doing a decent amount of damage bonus. It's just not huge. I don't think that for the cost of, your gold head, your universal sculptures, this third skill is absolutely crazy. Even the second skill is not crazy, but I think that third skill, if you're running the fourth skill, if you're running multiple siege marches, it could be kind of a game changer. And there's a high chance, of 50% chance of inflicting the effects every time you deal direct damage factor, which is obviously quite very, very possible with Archimedes, which is obviously launching over 3 seconds, direct damage factor every second for 3 seconds after his active skill. There's a very, very high chance of that actually coming off there. So that was Archimedes. And now we're getting on to Mary the First, aka Bloody Mary. And yeah, if you saw the active skill, you can see it looks like bloody roses, which is really cool actually. But yeah, look at this. This actually image behind is really cool as well, like a cathedral behind or something like that, some sort of palace maybe with a really detailed moon. And yeah, I really like this actually. Very triangular head, which is great. In fact, going with Archimedes in his geometry skills, I think that's very, very fitting. Mary with the triangular head and Archimedes there. But she's a skill damage commander, which is okay. But I would be tempted to put Archimedes as primary for the healing. So let's go and take a look at her skills. Again, single type. I know no AO. Raid requirement cost is exactly the same, 1,000, which is generally what every commander does in the game, and bar a few like Gorgo. So if this commander's troop is not within melee range of its target, okay, the target takes range additional damage every second for 4 seconds. So same thing, but it's 4 seconds, not 3 seconds, and the damage factor is lower. It's just damage over time. The enemy is going to be taking constant damage over time pretty much with these commanders, but it still equates to a 1200 damage factor. And okay, let's have a look at this one now. 450 times 4 is 1800, which I believe was the same. Yeah, exactly the same damage factors. Okay, there's the additional takes 5% increased damage for 4 seconds. That's if they're within melee range. So you will do 5% more damage. And when you've got two active skills at 1800, so 3600 damage factor, add an extra 5%. It's still not that much. Yeah, it's nothing huge. So yeah, that's kind of pointless, really. It's 5% increased damage for 4 seconds. So yeah, it's that damage over 4 seconds. I guess it's not bad. I mean, yeah, why not chuck it in there? Right, back into the fold. This Commander Siege unit's gained 20% attack. So we had health on the other one, on Archimedes, and 20% attack on this gal. 10% march speed, some extra march speed as well. Very, very welcome. So yeah, the health and then the attack, it works out quite well because you've got some survivability with Archimedes, but then some firepower, a little bit with Mary. Then 20% attack actually isn't too bad. So Tudor cannons. This obviously Tudor period was a period in obviously English history. But again, I'm not going to go too much into history because I will go wrong. I'm not a historian. This commander's troop deals 10% more range skill damage. So, you know, in Season of Conquest, she could go with another siege commander. She could potentially be with Margaret, to be fair, with a bit of healing if you've got a maxed Margaret. You've also got your Stephen, which does some nice healing. I mean, you could even pair one of these with Narcissus to give it some longevity in the obviously in the field, make it more survivable. So more range skill damage. Okay, great. I mean, these are doing skill damage. Can't click on this skill damage. It's like you want to click on it, but you can't. But I believe, doesn't that include direct damage factors and damage over time? I believe that skill damage is all included in that. I'm not that clued up on it, but this should affect both their active skills, surely. If their troops' target is currently receiving ranged additional damage, okay, ranged basic attacks from their troop have a 15% chance to extend the ranged additional damage by 1 second. Cooldown 7 seconds. Includes ranged direct damage and ranged additional damage. So that includes both of obviously what Mary's doing and Archimedes is doing. Wait. Chance to extend the range additional damage by 1 second. Okay. So this means that Archimedes will do an extra 400 damage factor and Mary will do an extra 300 damage factor over the next second. But yeah, it's only 15% chance, which is kind of low. But yeah, that's actually not too bad. But this is the third skill. Okay, so 5551 could potentially be good, but let's look at the fourth skill. This commander siege unit's gained 10% defense, so there's a little bit of survivability there with a tiny bit of defense. He's not huge. Whenever this commander's troop uses an active skill while in ranged mode, so obviously they're still doing active skills, yeah, they're both going to be doing active skills. It increases the target's range skill damage received by 10% for 3 seconds. Okay, with the cooldown of 10 seconds. That's a huge cooldown. Includes range direct damage and range additional damage. Siege and defense bonus will be 2% if it was at 1. And oh, to be fair, range skill damage taken increase 5% if you've got this to 1. So not too bad. I think, you know, 5551 wouldn't be too bad at all. Fire and Faith, boosted skill, Tudor cannons. Oh, okay. So yeah, this commander's troop deals 15% more range skill damage if their target troop is currently receiving range additional damage. 30% chance this time. So that's doubling the chances of increasing the range additional damage by 1 second. So you're going to be doing the active skill for an extra second, I believe. Tell me if I'm wrong in the comment section, guys, but I believe that's what it's saying. So instead of 4 seconds, that's going to extend that to 5 seconds. And with Archimedes, from 3 seconds to 4 seconds. So you're going to be doing damage like constantly with these commanders, as long as you're obviously still hitting a target. And I presume you're going to be hitting plenty of targets in KVK2. People might not know to avoid these commanders. But overall, I actually don't think these are bad commanders at all, guys. They don't actually seem far off what we've got in Season of Conquest. And we're going to have a look at that now, because obviously that is an interest to me. Let's go have a look. So we're in game, and Baba was the first commander I clicked on. Range direct damage factor 2,400, but yeah, that is actually pretty good. But obviously, that's only within melee range, and it's reduced by 50%. Obviously, if it's not within melee range. So when you're actually firing at range with Babu, you're just doing 1200 damage factor straight, 1200 damage factor, no extra bonuses here, and that's no different to these other season, the KVK2 commanders, Mary and Archimedes. So, as we know, Babu's a great commander. Babu's still doing a decent job. So pretty amazing, really. And he's got 15% attack, 15% defense bonus, okay, which is pretty good. So that's 30% stats there. And I know Archimedes had 15% health and Mary had 20% attack. You do get the ranged normal damage bonus there, but you know, nothing crazy. Normal damage reduction, range normal damage reduction, 10%, 10%, 10%. Yeah, everything's 10% there. And also there's extra range direct damage factor, 500. Again, nothing too crazy. His force skill's actually really good. You know, you got 30% health. Yeah, this is really, really nice, to be honest with you. So he's dead tanky, as we know. But honestly, I just don't think, looking at Babu's skills, I don't think these commanders are actually far off his firepower, to be honest with you. And let's look at Margaret as well. So we know Margaret's doing a great job, but the thing that makes Margaret pop off is this 50% ranged normal damage bonus, which obviously triggers on Cordoba's active skill, which is really handy. But ranged direct damage factor 600, and this is also damage over time for the next 3 seconds. This commander's troop deals 50% more ranged normal damage. Whenever the troop launches a ranged basic attack, it deals extra ranged damage factor 600, but that's reduced by 50% if not within melee range. So for 3 seconds, she's going to be doing 900 damage factor overall. You know, that's not even as much as what Mary's doing, and Archimedes are doing 1200 damage factor. The ranged normal damage bonus obviously is great for Cordoba. And yeah, 20% attack, 20% march speed, and she does gain the ranged normal damage bonus, which is good. And range skill damage bonus 20% is nice as well, and the march speed reduction, so more march speed reduction. And this is what I want to also bring up. So a lot of these commanders do march speed reduction. Garja also does march speed reduction somewhere, 15% here. You know what? If you've got a bank of siege commanders, four marches of siege commanders, and they're all doing march speed reduction on a single march, that march is going to be pretty slow. Even if you're attacking a rally, I mean, I attack rallies with my siege commanders, and it slows the rally down massively. So that could be really effective. But yeah, you know, I don't think they're that bad, guys. Tell me what you think. I think the new engineering commanders for KVK2 are pretty crazy. I mean, your KVK2 commanders, if you're looking at your YSG, you know, 1700 damage factor. Okay, 5 enemy troops as well. It's crazy. 1700, yeah, it's really good. As a ranged commander doing 1200 damage factor and potentially not even being targeted by any of the marches is kind of crazy. Obviously, Alex there, 1200 damage factor. These commanders are doing 1200 damage factor at range. That's a damage absorbing shield. He does actually do an instant proc damage factor of 1700. But again, you have to be in melee range, actually physically attacking. Now look at Cao Cao, 1400 damage factor. Again, not too far off what these siege commanders are doing. But yeah, you're going to be in the middle of a murder ball, and you could be getting attacked and smashed about too. 40% actually attack reduction is decent too, and march speed reduction. But you know, these are some of the top commanders you're going to get in KVK2. Oh look at this commander I can summon, Suleiman. So yeah, tell me what you think, guys. I don't think it's bad at all. Now I need to go and attack this guy. So let me show you, because obviously Archimedes actually increases the basic attack of yeah, can increase the basic attack of your marches. And if you're running 3 siege marches, let me just leave the alliance just a second. Well, I'll leave the alliance. I'm just going to collect some gifts. Silver chest, look, thank you, $5 daddy. And what I want to look at here is mainly the white numbers. So if we're going to attack, obviously, this march here, in fact, let me just get them set up initially first, keep them in range. So let's get them all in range. And what we want to really see is the white numbers I'm doing to this troop here. Now, we've got the same amount of troop, but obviously I'm running T5 and that's T4. So it'll be a little bit different. And the white numbers will actually change with obviously the amount of troops you're fielding. And the new crystal tech, we're all going to have loads of troops, to be honest. But if I attack the target with obviously 3 siege marches, you should see 2,200, 3,300 there, 3,300 again. Now, Archimedes, obviously, his skill can increase his basic attacks by 50%. So where we're doing there 3,000 normal damage with these 3 marches, now that's going to be increased as well with 4 marches. You know, we could be doing 4,000 base, you know, your basic attack damage, those white numbers, and increase that by 50%. Obviously, you're looking at nearly 6,000, and those white numbers can soon destroy marches. So I think that actual debuff on that target could be kind of crazy. Obviously, again, it was T4, and I don't know the real numbers, what they would be if you're actually in KVK. But if you're a siege main and you're running multiple siege marches, I really think that increasing the basic attack could actually do quite a lot of damage over time for all your marches. And as you can see, got some decent reports there. And that's going to be an expensive hospital bill for my ult. And that, well, that took like, what, 10 or 15 seconds to actually destroy that march. I know it's a T4 march, but it's got gear on and stuff. And I left Alliance, but the power of siege, guys, the power of siege. So, guys, that's my lowdown on the new commanders. I hope you enjoyed the video. And again, just tell me what you think in the comment section. I'd love to know. This is Mr. Siege, and bye-bye.